Welcome to Oxygen for Educators. This is Michelle Kinder. I'm one of your hosts. We're going to be looking at the hard truth that students need more, and simultaneously the adults in the building are feeling under-resourced and overextended. Join us as we elevate the voices of people across the country doing this work. We'll be looking at anxieties, overwhelm, burnout, joy, commitment, and everything in between. We're glad you're here. This space is for you. Hello, everyone. This is Michelle Kinder, one of the hosts of Oxygen for Educators, joined by Chris Kent Phelps. Chris, hello.
Hello, Michelle.
How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Tell the listeners what we're up to. I'm good. I jumped right in because I'm excited for them to hear from Eric. He stayed in my head and heart after this interview in a significant way. So I just blew right past your question. I'm good.
Same for me. I can't stop thinking about this interview, so I'm so excited to get straight to it. So Eric Chandler is the leader at Pride Academy in Bristol, Indiana, and I want to read Pride Academy's mission statement because I loved it. The Pride Academy's mission is to foster a renewed mindset on how to be successful and achieve the highest potential of every student through individual, flexible, and rigorous educational experiences in order to enhance academic growth and build lifelong learners. So this academy, Pride Academy, is one where when children make behavioral missteps, they are sent to Pride, and they are welcomed with open arms and lots of love, respect, and empathy. This team is doing great work, and all I can say is this man is the light, and you'll understand that statement after you listen to this interview. But I have no doubt he will provide oxygen for educators, which is our mission. So I suggest we jump in, listen to his story from the psych ward to the elementary classroom.
Perfect. And then we'll meet you back here after you hear from Eric to highlight what stood out to us.
Great.
Let's start our conversation just hearing a bit about your life and how you zigged and zagged through the mental health space and then into education and anything else you want to share.
So right out of high school, I was supposed to go to Indiana State. I graduated in 92. 3 days before I was going to school, my parents had split up, threw me for a loop.
3 days before?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my
Yep.
gosh.
And so that first semester, hot mess, yeah. So, yep. So instead of the freshman 15 is more like the freshman 50 by the end of the year. They ended up reconciling, but by then, trying to get the cumulative to be 2.0, like I had lost all scholarships and stuff. So basically I took like a gap 5 years and just worked everywhere, Foot Locker. I had a bunch of jobs. And then finally a friend of mine said, hey, I work in the school system as an ISS teacher. Why don't you try to get in? And I was like, okay. Excuse me. And I became a paraprofessional for an ED room, emotionally disabled room.
Yeah.
I was like, this is awesome. I mean, these kids are crazy, but this is awesome. But it paid $6.36 an hour. That was 1998. After the 90 days, you got $6.99. And so I was like, I really like this job, so I want to continue it. So I needed a second job. At that time, I found out about a psych hospital around us, Oak Psychiatric Hospital, and they had a residential program. Read the description. I was like, it sounds like these kids, maybe it will help. So I started working there part-time. So I would go from the school and then work in the evenings at the psych hospital. And I was hooked. So I finished working at the school for a year and a half. And then I quit the school and worked at Oak Lawn 13 years. Everything from case management to a unit supervisor. I ended as a rec therapy assistant. And that kind of was really like my college for like mental health. Like I really felt like I grew up there. In '08 was the big legislation where the governor at the time, Mitch Daniels, really needed to cut $300 million. And so we were all trying to figure out what's going to happen next. And I was like, well, I really need to go back to school because I'm not getting paid and I have a kid. I got another on the way. And so talking to the powers that be, your degree is not in a field that would benefit Oaklawn. It's like, well, if I'm going back to school, I was going to be a teacher anyway. Like I knew that since 6th grade. So I went back, started the grind, and in January of 2011 became a 1st grade teacher. And kind of like the rest is history. I took over for a teacher who was diagnosed with cancer, RIP. Yeah, that was rough because they did not like me at first. But I remember she was with me my first 3 days. And she's like, yeah, there's a couple of these kids. And she was explaining one of them. And she's like, well, he just cusses and he's just bad. I was like, well, what's he do? She's like, well, he says, damn. And he's called me the B word. And I was like, that's it? Like, it's like, if he's not over here hurting himself or hurting somebody else, like that's like those type of behaviors did not bother me. You know what I mean? So
well, you had a totally different grid.
Yes.
Everything was in such a different context because of your earlier work, I bet.
Yes, and so at Oaklawn we had an inpatient unit, a young sexual offender unit. We had it all. And so getting to that and this 1st grade 6-year-old that says the D word and the B word, I'm like, man,
we got this.
Yeah, I was like,
but how talk about a critical sacred role taking those kids through the loss of their teacher and them getting used to you, and that's a big deal as a first re-entry back into the school space.
Yeah, well, so luckily, I mean, she did not pass away during that time. She would still come in here and there. She had already...
I still saw her.
Yeah, she, I think it was her 2nd time that she had to take like a break, but this time she knew like she wasn't, I don't want to say she knew that she was going to pass away, but she knew she was going to retire. Mm-hmm. And I know the administration and the social work at the time did a really good job of checking in with them and making sure everything was okay. But there was the first couple weeks for sure. It was like, I want her back. And I'm like, I know you do, buddy. Kind of want her back too. I mean, it was, and I didn't know going in like that's what it was. You know what I mean? I was just like, I got a gig. Like I'm super happy. And she was more than accepting, more than happy. I mean, she basically said, Eric, you can have all my stuff. The only thing she took was her rocking chair. I mean, yeah. I mean, and so I remember that when I moved to a different school and I became the academic dean, the person who took over my 1st grade spot, it's like, you can have it all. There's just a couple books I want for my boys. That was it. You can have it all. She's like, are you serious? I was like, absolutely. You just pay it forward.
Pay it forward, supporting those newer folks.
Yeah.
So you went from that 1st grade, then you went to academic dean at a different school? Am I tracking?
Close. So I was at Mary Feeser for 2.5 years as 1st grade. I had to leave because I had low seniority. And so Elkhart, you still have a job, you just have to go to a different school. And so then I interviewed and I went to Roosevelt STEAM Academy and taught 1st grade there for a year. And at that point in time, I didn't really want to be an administrator because I was going to die at Feeser. I was like, I'm teaching 1st grade for the rest of my life, and that is it. And, you know, God's like, no, we have different plans for you, sir. And the principal at the time said, I want you to get your master's. I think you'd be a great administrator. I was like, okay. And so worked on it. The next year I was the academic dean, and I was like, oh, okay. And I mean, he saw something. I wasn't, I mean, it's a bigger, at that point in time, I think we had like 630 kids. Like the reach is different. So, and for me, I grew up in Elkhart, knew that school, and I take a lot of pride of being very urban. So being an example, feeling like a lot of kids need to see people that look like me, that look like them.
Yep.
And I really wanted to be that example. And so I was like, all right. And in that role, I did pretty good. I was dean for 2 years. We got a new principal. I was an assistant for a year. Him and I did not get along. And so I switched buildings, went to Mary Beck Elementary, worked with a fantastic principal there, was an assistant. Opening came to Hawthorne Elementary, where I actually went to elementary school. Oh. And so I felt like it was full circle. So I went over there and was principal there for 3 years. And then COVID happened. My last year there, the position came open for Pride Academy. And I told my team as soon as it got posted, I said, I'm going to apply for this because this is what I'm supposed to do. And they all supported it. They all understood it. We're still all friends to this day because they knew.
Yeah.
That's what you're supposed to do. And so
the scaffolding of all of your experiences seemed like you were uniquely positioned and uniquely prepared for that job.
Yeah.
Talk about that. Talk about Pride and what that school's about and why you were the perfect person to lead that team.
So it's crazy to me because when I worked at Oak Lawn, we had a school on campus, and I always looking around like they had 4 teachers, but they never had like the administrator, like we had a let's say a unit supervisor or a residential supervisor, and they would have meetings with the teachers, but it wasn't really more academic, say, focused. It was more like they just need to be in school. Mm-hmm. And so when we were talking about Pride for the district, my supervisor at the time, they did a lot of visits throughout Indiana trying to figure out how to set this up and make it really, really effective. Because the goal is, say hypothetically, we have 13 elementary schools in Elkhart. If your student gets referred and they come to Pride, the goal is for them to transition back to their home school. Like, they are not to stay with Pride forever.
Right.
The goal is to help them with their behaviors and their skills to get them ready to go back. And so that's what we do. They come to us, whether it is, say hypothetically, they like to take nice jogs throughout the building. So we help them figure out, number one, what is frustrating you so much that you don't want to stay in your classroom? And then number 2, how do we get you to verbalize and figure out what's another route for you to handle it? And so that's the big thing.
Yeah.
Just trying to help you with that aspect of it. And so, and we have, I put my team, and I told them I was going to brag about them, so I put them against any staff in the world with what we do. So, like, it is never a dull day, but we make a difference, and I know we do.
Yeah.
And I think even people in the district, it's working to prove them wrong sometimes, or not necessarily people in the district, but people in the community.
I hear you.
Because, getting a bad rap, and it's like, you've never even been in my hallway, so you have no clue what we do.
Right.
So.
And When you think about your team and the work you all do, and that lens on kids and behavior, and it sounds very trauma informed, what do you wish all educators knew that you and your team know that would make a difference for them in terms of lightening their load?
I think people at the top that sit in the big office need to get their hands dirty. Mm-hmm. Like, especially when it comes to like legislation, like you have people making these bills and these rules, and they've never stepped foot in the classroom, have no idea, or let's say even hypothetically graduated from high school 40 years ago.
Right.
The time for students to sit and get has been over for a long time.
Yeah.
If I have a kid, or if our staff has a kid who is working, let's just say completing an assignment on the floor, or they have the iPad like this while they're laying there doing their work, or if they're laying on the floor writing with a clipboard, as long as the task is getting done, that's the way it is. There's no more lecturing
right
at this level, and you can say, well, you can get them to do, but there are alternative ways to learn.
Yeah.
In every setting. You can't tell me adults who are taking online classes are sitting like you and I right now.
Right.
You know what I mean? Some people are listening to their lectures while they're doing dinner.
Yeah.
Or doing the dishes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's
that flexibility.
Yeah.
And I also hear in your comment like a choose your battles, and maybe even sidestep this notion of battles completely, and really kind of like leaning into how is it that kids are learning now, and what is actually important and what isn't, and loosening some of that.
Yeah. In the power struggle, we do a fantastic job. Like the big thing our first year we talked about was tone of voice. Mm-hmm. Just tone of voice. You can diffuse so many things with your tone of voice.
Yeah.
But if you come at a kid escalated, we just talked about this at our last staff meeting. If you're de-escalated, you can't de-escalate a kid. And so we talk about like knowing yourself, and my rule of thumb is it's okay to tap out.
Yeah.
I have tapped out of multiple situations. It's okay to know, like, yo, Lukey over here is getting on my nerves.
Yeah. And
I'm going to need you to go, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to need you to go handle it. I'll check back in. You let me know what you need, but I can't with that right now. And that's totally okay.
It's normal.
Like, that's totally okay.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing we do a great job of doing. And then talking afterwards, but tone of voice too, because our kids love to puff up, and you know, like I'm 6'3", 280, and they crack me up when they're puffing up at me, because I'll just look at them and I just say, you let me know when you're done. Like I had a kindergartner today, and I was just looking. He's slapping me. He was going to take
you on.
Yes. He might even took his shirt off for his adventure. And I just looked. He's like, "Why are you laughing?" I was like, "I don't know what else you want me to do right now, buddy." And so it's just like getting people to understand. In 2024, soon to be 2025, it is not the 1990s.
Right.
The school that you think is going on is not going to happen anymore. Those kids are gone. We just went through a pandemic. Mm-hmm. Those days are over. So how do we adjust as an educational system?
Yeah. And do you have a lot of freedom with your team to do what you know is best for them and for the students?
I ask a lot of forgiveness. So, I mean, we do a lot. Like, I have two teachers especially. We do a lot with the neuroscience aspect of it. Mm-hmm. And working through that. They are geniuses when it comes to that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I even brought some of the books. The Body Keeps the Score is a big one. And we do a lot with the zones of regulation. Our social worker does a lot. And so we are just trying to find alternative ways to get kids to de-escalate, to regulate themselves, and to figure out positive outlets. Because that's going to be the big thing when they're not with us.
Yeah, right.
Because when they go from a classroom of 8 to 10 back to 20, how are you going to handle your situation and verbalize what you need when it comes to that? That's going to be the big thing. And that's always a worry for us. But I think the one thing we talk about, if I call you, one of the other 13 elementary schools, and I say, hey, Michelle, it's time for Lukey to come back, you have to trust that we know what we're talking about. And sometimes there's pushback, but I'm not even going to remotely make that call if I don't think. Right. Right. So
when the kids go back, do you all work with the teachers or just the kids, or how does that handoff happen?
So, like my second in charge, who really should be an assistant principal, she is the transition coordinator. And so she kind of goes and like she will, like, say for a week or two, sit, watch, kind of play in the background just to make sure everything's going okay. We have monthly meetings with the schools to make sure everything's all right, just to check in.
Amazing.
And make sure they're following the IEPs and just following up to make sure, like, we never just, like, dump the kid back.
Right.
That's never the case.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah.
Shifting gears a little bit, in the same way that kids are not as they once were, and meeting their needs is not what it was even 10 years ago, are you seeing the same with the adults in the building, and what's your approach there?
I've been lucky. We have not had a lot of turnover. I think I know what, after being in the workforce for 51 ever. Hold on one second. I think I know what I would want from a boss. And the cool thing is my staff has been handpicked. I've hired them, or I have recruited / stolen them from other schools. So I know them really well, and are friends. And so making sure our mental health is taken care of, I think that's the one thing I would say that they respect about me most. And having that check-in, whether it's a quick text. Well, and my thing is, we always joke and like, yo, fix your face. Like that's always the joke, because we know each other well enough to be like, yo, what is going on with him? And so whether it's pulling him in the office real quick, whether it's texting, being able to have that real conversation and just simply say, what do you need? Like what do you need? Because we've had some rough things happen with the staff this year, and so making sure, and they're just so resilient, and they take care of each other, and they make sure people are okay. And that's why I say we are the best at what we do.
It's such a parallel process that you're describing, that I'm gonna see you as a whole person, and I'm gonna like look for the reasons behind why your face might be doing that. and then you're gonna extend that same grace to the kids in the building. Like, yeah. I feel like in a lot of systems the expectation is do that for the kids in the building while your soul is being crushed. And that doesn't seem to be a winnable strategy. So you seem to be doing it for everyone in the building, caring for the whole person.
Right. And I don't think she would care if I said or shared this. So one of our teachers, like, she lost her son.
Ugh.
And so we're a close enough knit group, like, that effing sucks.
Yeah.
And like, you don't have to say anything to me. We got you. And nobody at the district better say nothing to me about anything, because this is what we're doing. We're going to take care of her. We will take care of the kids too during this time, but that's what we're doing.
Ooh, that 63280 goes both ways. It goes with the littles and it goes with the power brokers. Like, yeah, you're protective in both directions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry for your colleague. That's truly unthinkable.
And it's, and she's more than appreciative, more than she knows she's loved. We got her, and people stepped up for her, and it would go for any one of them. And here's the thing, we only have 17 adults.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And there are days where people get on people's nerves. That's life. I mean, but the question I always ask them when any of the trivial adult stuff happens is, the bottom line is why we're here is, are we doing what's best for kids? Because that's the final question. In the grand scheme of things, are we doing what's best for kids? So,
that is coming up in all of our calls, just that notion of like that North Star, the student. What do they need? How are we meeting their needs? And a piece of that is meeting the needs of the educators. But losing sight of that North Star gets us in trouble fast.
Yeah. And it's them calling me out too.
Yeah.
It's them holding me to the fire because I have a bad habit. And they'd all tell you, if it's a real, I almost said a bad word, if it's a real bad day, for like, we can't have this meeting. But there are days where we have work we have to do. Like, we have to get done, which goes back to our guiding question. Are we doing what's best for kids? And just because we are mentally tired, is that what's best for kids? And at that point in time, it's not, because we have to figure out what's the best treatment plan for them, what's the best intervention, sticking our feet to the fire, making sure we're doing what's best for them, even though Lukey over here was out here just running and we had to call the police.
Lukey's had a hard day today.
Yeah, Lukey is. It's the best name I can think of right now.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. So when you think about all of the educators that might be listening to this that are not necessarily getting the same level of support, what's your advice for them?
It's hard because there's so much red tape when it comes to like that administrator-teacher relationship. Because, some administrators, like, I try real hard not to say the P word, the principal, just because your job is to make them better, not to hold stuff over them. Like that's our job. We're supposed to help make teachers better. And that doesn't mean you hold evals over them, that you don't have gotcha moments. You pull them to the side and just say, hey, what if we did this? Or I wonder if you did A, B, or C, And so it is trying your best to still have an adult conversation with your supervisor or with, your counterpart, and saying, how can we move to the next step so it's not like I got you? Because I worked with principals who, even towards me, like, gotcha. But you didn't get me because, like I do my job. So, but you know what I mean?
I do. That, like, that we're in it together, and we all happen to have different roles that get us there, but not that hierarchical, squeezy kind of energy.
Yeah, it just. We're in a time where it can't be like, I'm your boss, you have to do yeah. You can still be like, I'm your boss, I need you to do A, B, or C. Those are two different things. And that's, I go towards the second part. And I think that's why people respect me a lot, because I go towards the second part. I don't bark it, I just ask.
Right.
Now, if you don't do it after I ask, then that's something different.
Right.
But, you know what I mean? I've never been that type of person anyway, just barking orders.
Yeah.
So,
And in your example, I also heard that there's an aspect of this that happens peer to peer, this oxygen for educators notion that even if someone is in a situation where the administrator maybe isn't as tuned into their mental health, there are little springs, little wells that we can access from our peers to ground us, to help us, feel seen and heard and understood and supported, like the teacher you talked about. There's ways to create that even in small pockets if your system isn't as healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you always have to have a go-to. The whole staff knows, like, I love chocolate chip cookies. So it's just, even with me being type 1, they know, like, yo. But it's always like...
Of all the ways I thought you were going to end that sentence.
Yeah.
I couldn't have gotten to chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But you have to have a person too.
Yeah.
And I am blessed enough. I got a couple that I can just be like, hey, like, but it has to be a person that's going to check you too.
Right.
Because I'll always be like, I need you to tell me if I'm wrong. Like, and because it can't be negative. That's my thing. I'm not coming to you for negative. And I'm going to say this and people will be like, I'm turning this off. But the profession can be negative. But it can be. They can suck the oxygen out of it, especially in situations like we are in right now. But coming back to the original question, are we doing what's best for kids? Then that makes you realize, oh shit, am I tripping?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, am I?
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is that what's best for kids.
Right.
That's yeah.
It like refocuses everything, and it holds us accountable for the kind of energy we're bringing to the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Of everything you encounter in a week, what gives you the most hope and what gives you the most angst? I can see your brain going, do I want to say that?
Well,
am I going to go there?
Yep. So I was excited for today. I'm like, we just had 5 days off. Like, I'm straight. Like, I joke because I always wear tennis shoes. You know, a lot of that has to do with like my physical ailments. You got to chase
Lukey.
That's right. That's right. And that's the other part of it. But so my angst is when you have that parent that wants to talk to you at 7:03 in the morning, coming back from a break. What could we be talking about right now at arrival? She's like, I know this is the busiest time, but, and then I'm just like, okay, fine. You know what I mean? But then, you know, after you take care of that and then you walk around and you see everybody and you get the hugs from the kids and then you get Mr. Chandler, I missed you, and you see everybody working and doing things like that's why I do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you see the growth, like, especially like we're almost halfway done with the year, which is crazy to me. But like, and you see them coming in and you see them wanting to work.
Yeah.
Now, tomorrow might be completely different.
Yeah.
Because the newness of expectations.
Yeah. But the vibe of re-entry day, the energy around the day that people come back from a break tells you a lot about the culture of a place.
Mm-hmm.
Even
and
if
it can also
does
tell
fade.
you, yeah, it can also tell you who didn't do nothing over break, but maybe play on their iPad, which was one kid, the kid that was hitting me today and had to be picked up by his mother. Yeah.
Little one. Aww.
Yeah.
Oh. So the hope is the kids, the hard work, same with the teachers, I bet. Like just the way everybody's moving everything forward. And the angst is the adult drama kind of siphoning energy from the kid-focused work.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I get that so much. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I relate to that.
Yeah. And it is real hard these days working with some parents because we have really supportive parents. So I'm not saying that, but there are some parents where I'm just like, it's not how I parent. And so, because I need my son to tell me what he did first, because I'm not just going to believe what my kid tells me because he's 15 and I don't believe you.
That prefrontal cortex is still cooking.
And you're telling me you believe the 9-year-old over the adult. Okay. Like that's the stuff where I'm just like, I can't. This is hard for me. Because that is not what my parents would have done. No.
A lot of the educators I've talked with over the last couple years, the thing that breaks their heart the most is not feeling like parents are pulling on the same side of the rope with them like they once did. And a little bit of questioning integrity or motives or whatever. It's an arrow to the heart for educators.
Absolutely. And especially in like pride situation, like we are trying our best to make your baby successful to transition back to their home school. Trying our best, and we have to pull on the same side of the rope.
Right. Yeah. In the absence of that, it's insurmountable because you're already working miracles. Like I'm picturing a district that doesn't have a team like yours to support when a kid does need that kind of intervention. It seems absolutely critical that you be able to do the work your team knows how they can do with the support of the parents so that Lukey gets back to his home school and becomes who he's meant to become.
Yeah.
How long? What's the average stay for a kid?
Oh, it can depend. I mean, we've had a couple kids who have been with us all 4 years, and I think that's just simply more this smaller classroom environment is just where they're gonna be. And we've had some be with us for 6 weeks. I mean, so we've had 2 second graders in the past month return to their home schools. Tear jerkers, very good boys. Yeah.
Oh.
Very good.
But it's good too to hear what you said because it takes time. Like these are not like little Band-Aid easy fixes. The behavioral stuff is usually trying to tell us something, whether it's a skill deficit or trauma or who knows what, and it takes time.
Yep. Absolutely.
Do the teachers, are they able to stay in any kind of relationship with the kids once they go back to their home school, or just the way life goes, is it pretty hard to do that?
Yeah, we have some that still stay in touch, write letters, or maybe do Google Meets and stuff once in a while. Yeah.
Sweet. Oh.
Yeah. And our kids get so attached. For one of our second grade girls, when the one student left, broke her heart. I mean, she was a hot mess that afternoon. She was with me crying. She's like, you need to take me to him right now. And I'm like, sweetie, like we can't go to him. He's only been gone 45 minutes, but he can't but it was adorable because, it was genuine. Like she loves him. Right. And wants to stay in touch with him, and and I tell people that's the beauty of pride. And for us, it's like helping our students like school again. Right. Because some of our students did not have a good experience exiting their home school, so we're trying to help them also like school again.
Like see themselves as learners, see themselves as part of a community, all the things.
Yep.
Okay, so in the last 2 years, can you think of a moment that really tested your resilience as an educator and a leader that you're willing to talk about?
I hate having to call the police. And there has been a couple times. This one in particular was actually 3 years ago. There was an incident where she was so frustrated and mad, and she tried to go out my office door window, because she knew she was going to be in trouble and she was going to go back to detention. And she's like, "You're not holding me in here." And she was not joking. She's going to go through that window. And luckily, the officers arrived in time. That was one. I had one last year where you would have never thought it. So the first 3 years, Pride was K1, K2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Okay.
This year we are K1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we got rid of middle school. So last year, our 7-8 room was rough. And so last year we had a 8th grader punch a 7th grader and basically like broke his nose. Oof. And I mean, the 7th grader was just lippy. The 8th grader, for whatever reason, he was only a half-day kid, like, wasn't having it. So I brought him down to my office, and I'm talking to him. I'm like, "What the hell happened? Like, what are you doing?" "Chandler, today ain't the day." Dude, me and my security guy just like, "What do you mean today is not the day?" Like, I just wasn't doing it. Okay. Well, and I'm like, "You do know, like, the police are coming. I have no other option. Like I've told you before, I can't control this." And I said, "If they press charges, brother, that's on you."
Yeah.
And
your hands are tied.
And so the officers get there. And this is the part that, like, I knew where it was coming from, and it wasn't at me. And he didn't tear up. He's like, "You're really doing this?" Yeah. And he's like, "Well, you never effing cared about me, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Buddy, I told you." And he's cussing us all out as they're putting the cuffs and stuff on. And he's just like, I hate you. I was like, "Okay." I said, "Good luck, man. Good luck." But you know what I mean? Like, and he had been with us. That was going into his 2nd year. And I would have lost money betting that he was the one that would have popped him. But it's like, once you physically assault somebody and there's blood everywhere, like, I can't help you. Like,
right.
So those were big ones.
Those are rough moments. Yeah. Big, really rough.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense of 1 or 2, 3 things, whatever, that you would change across the country in education if you had that kind of a magic wand, like really significant systemic type shifts?
I don't know if you can make parenting classes mandatory.
Well, I mean, support, like that level of support for parents, to me, that would be one. Yeah. That would make a big difference.
I do. I just think some people don't know what they don't know. I mean, I don't know. I know that's a rough thing. I think there's just so much mental health. So like Indiana, for example, it's real rough in northern Indiana right now for, say, ages 6 to 12 to get into a residential facility. So I would love for something like that to be up here. Like I joke and say if I won the Mega Millions, that's what I would do. Because since Oak Lawn has kind of revamped their things and moved, that's nothing that we have here. And so if you're not successful at Pride, like they're the only other option is getting school at home.
Wow.
And so that is like homebound schooling. And for some of our kids, like after everything, like, and that is my last resort. I try very, very hard. We try very, very hard for that not to be the case. But that is one major thing I wish we had around us, just so, I don't know if it would be a day treatment program or just a facility to take like 6 to 12, where let's just say minimum stay 3 months.
Yeah.
So they can get meds regulated and all that stuff, so they could get to where they need to be. So then they can reentry back to Pride, and then they can go back to their home school.
Yeah. So the way it is, gosh, the amount of pressure that must be on you and your team, knowing that if a student has needs greater than what you can meet, they don't go somewhere where they get those needs met. They go where there's no support in terms of professional support. Of course, they have the support of their family sometimes and sometimes not, I guess. But
and that's the part, because we all have like such big hearts for our clientele.
Yeah.
And so, and you try not to take it home, but
you do.
Yes. And so you're just trying to figure out how you can best help them. But sometimes, I mean, some kids are not ready to be educated. And so trying to help them, but there's nothing around us for that age group, like within an hour and a half, 2 hours. And if there is, it's full. You know what I mean?
Or outrageously expensive. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
And I know that's definitely true for a ton of Texas and other states. So I really like that one. Okay, so support, different kinds of supports for parents, including information. The gap in services, like in your case, the 6 to 10 who need intensive outpatient or inpatient.
Yep.
Any others? Those are both really good.
I mean, any type of mental health services, honestly, within the schools. We could easily use another social worker. I mean, our social worker is grade A top choice, but we need 2 more of her.
Yeah.
Just because there's so much trauma with our babies. And that, I mean, every school should have 2 or more social workers, in all honesty. I mean, because like I said before, we're coming out of a freaking pandemic.
No, you're so right. It's like we've mismatched what's going on with kids and how we serve them. There's a mismatch in so many ways. Yeah. Yeah,
and we hear it a lot across this group of kindergartners are like the COVID babies. Like so. And
it's real.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. What do you personally do to recharge or reset when you're on the struggle bus?
Chocolate chip cookies.
Katie, make a note. We've got to send Eric chocolate chip cookies.
I buy way too many shoes. My wife would tell you. I read a lot. And that is just... I probably read too late at night, because that is just to numb my mind, psychological thrillers, just to calm it down. And so it just helps. Yeah.
That's a good list. And I love that you knew your list. I feel like that's oxygen for educators. Like, do people know their list, and do they know what their relationship is with their list? Like, are they actually leaning in, or, oh, yeah, I know this helps me, but I haven't done it for 6 years kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, when the weather's nice, I was telling Katie earlier, we're supposed to get like 6 inches of snow today. So I do like to walk, but that's not going to happen for a little bit. We do have a treadmill, but... Yeah, I also do love walking.
Get outside and
yes.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Before I ask you some rapid fire questions, is there anything that you coming on to the podcast were like, I really want to make these few points? Is there anything you had in mind that we want to surface?
Not particularly. I just want to say thank you for having me on. I was super nervous the past 24 hours. I was freaking out before I left school today.
No way. Really? No,
Oh, yeah.
You're a
Oh, yeah.
natural. I could talk to you for 10 hours straight and I would not be bored. And I also, I'm so inspired by your background and your presence and your commitment to want kids to see you and know that you are in their corner. I mean, I just think, you have fans in Texas as of now. Probably had them before, but now big time. So thank you for the work you do.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm only as strong as the people I work with, and I have a fantastic team with me, for sure.
They do. They sound like a great team. One of these days, if I'm ever near, I would love to come tour and see you all.
You are welcome anytime. I tell people, just spend a day with us.
Oh,
you got to bring Fernando, though.
Yes,
tell him he's got to come.
We'll do a road trip.
And if you're on TikTok, Pride Academy on TikTok, our stuff's pretty funny.
Okay, good. I'll check it out. All right, you okay with some rapid fires to close this out?
Yep.
So these are just like whatever comes to mind. If nothing does, that's cool too. Do you have any go-to songs that give you oxygen that educators should add to their playlists?
Oh, I'm going to say they need to listen to the new Kendrick Lamar.
Okay.
Squabble up.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Okay, all right, you kind of answered this, but it might have a tiny bit of a different answer. What helps you reset that would surprise those who know you?
The people that know me know, but I have an extensive... So my office, I will take a picture tomorrow and try to send it to Katie. I have a massive amount of Funko Pops. Of what? Funko Pops bobbleheads.
Oh.
Behind my desk, I have 263. Yeah, I got a problem. And I also am a big WWE fan.
Okay. So who are the bobbleheads, though? Are they just all anything?
Just random. Like, it goes anywhere. Like, I have the whole set of Goodfellas. Mm-hmm. Have a lot of Marvel. Have a lot of wrestlers. But
has anyone made one of you?
I have two, actually.
Okay. So you're like Dwight.
Yes.
Did you ever watch The Office?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, okay. We're like 8 times. 8 times. Both boys love it. So.
Oh. How old are your boys?
I got 24, 22, 15.
Oh, and all boys.
All dudes. Yep.
Oh man. Okay, so your wife is like holding down the estrogen pole in your house.
Yes, we call her the queen.
Well, I guarantee she is. I vouch to her.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, ready? 3 more.
Mm-hmm.
Any daily rituals or routines that you swear by?
On my way to work, there's nothing on. There's no music. There's no nothing. It's just dead silent.
Ooh,
every day
powerful.
For probably the past 4 or 5 years. One of the music pastor at our former church talked about like how that helped him recenter, and so every day nothing's on except for the heat.
Ooh, that is really interesting. You have my interest piqued because I know I'm quick to turn on a podcast or music, and some of that's an anxiety reaction, like don't leave me alone with my thoughts. So I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Try it and see, because I was like, I can't do that, because I like listening to books too.
Yeah.
But it definitely helps me.
I'm gonna try it. I'll let you know if I was brave enough to really do it, and then the impact it had on me. I like doing those experiments, so I bet I'll do it. Okay, good one. If you could, this one comes from Chris, the co-host. She said, and you met Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with Joe. Okay. She said, if you could etch a message on a stone tablet that would be found in 500 years, what would you say? And cuss words are welcome.
I just tried to be the light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Now you got me a little whimpery. Thank you for that. Listen, I've spent less than an hour with you, and I can tell you you're doing that. You are definitely the light. So thank you. Gosh. Okay. Last one. Do you have any tried and true, like, mantra, saying, quote, prayer that rolls around in your head?
It's funny. So one of the in-service days we had going back, they had a game of Jeopardy, and one of the categories were Chandlerisms our special ed teacher made. Because there's, I guess, a lot of things that I say sometimes.
I'm going to need to see all of those.
One of them is, sometimes sometimes we say certain things because my kids are different. You're taking me to the highest of festivity. I know for sure that's one of them. Definitely fix your face has been one. We had one, Emily and I, she's the transition coordinator.
I'm still stuck on the highest level of festivity.
Oh yeah. You can hashtag it. I'm trying to think. Those who find cliffs. What was the second part? But basically, it was F around and find out. It was just a nicer way to say it.
Yeah. That's a thing. That is a thing.
Oh, yeah. And so, I mean, there's a couple. I'll have to ask Jaeger because there's a bunch of them. I was like, oh, I do say that. I do say that. I do say that. Yeah. There's a couple of them.
Well, we were joking when we first got on, but we weren't recording. So when Katie and I were doing research for this, for the listeners to know, we saw a post that was made celebrating Principal's Day, and the comments, who I assume were your staff and parents, and I don't know who all was commenting, but the amount of appreciation for you, the number of times I read the best or GOAT, or, just like, you can tell that you are loved, you are the light, you are adored in your system. I'm so happy that Lukey and all those babies find their way to you and your team, and I'm just grateful to spend this time with you and to share a little bit of your story with folks. I know that you will be giving them oxygen. I'm certain of it. So thank you for your time and your work in the world.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We'll let you know how we can stay in touch and stay in conversation. One of these days I'm going to be near you, and I'm going to come see Pride and get to experience what's happening there firsthand.
Absolutely. Any day.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Welcome back, everyone, from the interview with Eric. Hopefully
Eric the Light.
Eric the Light. He has a lot of nicknames, so we'll just add this to the list, I think. And given the vibe I got about his coworkers, I think they'll properly take this and mock him with love and affection, which is a very special love language.
Love it.
So we want to talk about like what jumped out, what felt like oxygen, just kind of highlight and underline some of the things that popped for us. And is it okay if I start with one, Chris?
Please do. I'd love it.
So one of the things that stuck with me about Eric and his story is trusting the scaffolding of our experiences, because he had such a ziggy-zaggy path to his current role. But now you look at all the things he went through and you're like, all of this makes you so uniquely qualified to do the work you're doing in the world. And so I spent a lot of time this week since he and I visited just thinking about what an example he is of that, and how when people get like angsty about how their life is zigging and zagging instead of maybe the linear thing they pictured, I hope they'll think about Eric and trust that it is scaffolding and it is leading to something that they can uniquely put into the world in the same way he does.
I love that. Well, I wanted to add to that, if that's okay. It was fascinating to me that at all of these different points, he knew that the Pride Academy job was the one for him. He knew that in 6th grade, he was supposed to be an educator. How? It's fascinating to me. He's very, very, very self-aware.
Yeah, totally. Oh, well said. What else jumped for you?
It'll make me cry to think back to him talking about.
Wait, you're going to cry? That's going to be so weird and unusual.
Don't sell me out.
No one saw that coming.
Okay, so there may be tears. When he spoke about having to call the cops on kids, I could feel how hard that was for him just listening. And it really took me to someone in his position is like the ultimate criminal justice reformer and disrupting that playground to prison pipeline, because they're focusing so hard on teaching those children how to respond to hard things. And just when he spoke about verbalizing what's bothering you and coming up with that different solution, like that's the real reform work. We can talk all day long about how to change sentencing guidelines or, those things, but that's preventative, real work to keep people from getting into that system. So I just wanted to stand up and cheer or cry.
Yeah, no, I get that is 100% tear worthy. Not that all the times you cry aren't, because they are obviously, but yes, that it like both his commitment and clarity and his capacity to like see kids, not just for what they're doing, but for who they are. And then just stand in that fire in between bureaucracy and, nuttiness and high need kids. Like he just seems to be this rock that can stand in that gap and in that fire. And then can you imagine how many kids have been given like a shift in their trajectory because of Eric and his team? Like
I can. It's amazing. You know me, I just want to go to how do we scale that? Like how do we scale that? Because that's the real change right there, is the work they're doing.
Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
I also thought shifting gears just a little bit, but also talking about sticking to bureaucracy and difficult systems. What he said about people at the top getting their hands dirty, and how can a policymaker make policy around education if they've not been inside a school building and worked inside a school building? That was fascinating to me. I had an experience years ago where I very idealistically thought that legislatures would help me scale a project I was working on. And so I was lobbying in Austin, and I can't tell you the number of times that I walked in for a meeting and a chief of staff for a policymaker would sit me down and say, "Oh, could you teach me something about education? I just don't know anything about it." Like, that's their job, and they don't know anything about it. I mean, that's just the way the system works. So thinking about how different it could look if people who had been on the front lines were making the decisions, it's fascinating to me.
It's so fascinating. And there's so many layers to that notion that the people who hold the most power are the furthest away from the work, and so many systems, and certainly in education, is terrifying. And it is fun to dream about, like, what would it look like if the Erics of the world, if the team members that he talked about, I don't know if you can hear
I can
our
hear 'em.
little dog squad. I think they're saying, Eric, Eric. I don't know. Sometimes I can interpret them better than others, but
they were suggesting he run for office, I think.
Oh, yeah. I could get behind that. Oh,
Me
do you
too.
hear that endorsement? They've made banners.
Focus.
Okay, Patrick is on the dog situation. Can you tell? We'll see how it goes. Focus. Oh, yes. Yes, it's fun to dream about, like, how would systems be different? What decisions would be made if people who were in the work, in the schools, experiencing how he talked about how different kids are now compared to 10 years ago, the different stressors educators face. Yeah, I was glad he put into the conversation, into the room, quote unquote room, the dangers of that and the worry about that.
Mm-hmm. What else came up for you?
I really appreciated his commitment as a Black man to be in the classroom, to be in education systems, to understand what it means for kids to see him there and experience him in those different roles. That felt powerful to me, and the fact that he's working in spaces over his career that he also was a kid and feels so connected to the communities. I thought that goes to the self-aware point. Like he understands his the power of his presence and the power of being in relationship with him in those type of roles for all the kids, all the parents, all the educators that have worked with him. That really stood out to me.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that Eric kind of alluded to that I've been hearing over and over and over again in my conversations with educators over the last few years, it is just like the level of heart sickness for educators when parents are questioning their professionalism, their integrity, their intentions, their motives. The way that educators have gotten kind of caught up in the culture wars is injurious at a soul level from what I've picked up. What do you think about that?
I just get frustrated.
Yeah.
I just get frustrated because I think it stems from parents not doing their own work on themselves.
Yeah, and also getting yanked around. Like I think getting information that has parents ginned up and suspicious about people that forever they saw as their allies in their child's development, they now see with suspicion. And that is the worst thing for the kids. It's so problematic for the kids to see these adults they spend all day long with not pulling on the same side of the rope as the people who brought them into this world. Like that is such a hard thing for kids to make sense of. So, my hope is that educators who are hearing this don't feel crazy if that's hurting them, if that's hitting them differently than other stressors and frustrations. That's what I'm hearing from a lot of people. And if you're a parent and hearing this, my hope is you drop back into what you know to be true about the adults committed to your child's well-being and shut out all the noise, because this work is hard enough. Raising kids and educating kids is so hard when we're all pulling on the same side of the rope. In the absence of us pulling on the same side of the rope, we're not gonna hit the outcomes we want for each individual child or for the collective.
And I would just add, I think that's the purpose of doing this podcast and sharing these stories of these hidden heroes who get up every day and tears, who get up every day do this work. There they come.
No, but that's your heart. Like that's your drive. Yeah. And one of us has to keep humanity intact because the other one is just jaded as hell.
It takes all kinds, Michelle. It takes all kinds. Oh, let's talk about his suggestion about parenting classes. That was spot on to me. And it took me to a story. I had met him one time prior to watching your interview with him. And he talked to me about tone of voice, which he references in your discussion. And we have a family member who is a yeller. And watching the difference in how my kids interact once a voice is raised versus a calm voice, like after he talked to me about that, then I was watching for it, of course. And it was so spot on. But like, I know without a doubt that if that family member had that information and understood, like, kids don't respond that way anymore. Like that worked when we were kids and somebody yelled at us, we shaped up. That doesn't work anymore. You don't just get respect because you're an adult. And I don't know. I just felt like even just like that small nugget of information is game changing for a lot of people who aren't self-aware and, just they're not thinking about the impact of tone of voice.
Agreed. There's something in the nervous system work about how nervous systems tune into intonation before information. So like the way things are conveyed hits us before whatever the content is. And it either like amplifies the content and the ability for us to hear it or shuts down our ability to hear it and puts us in a survival state. So I loved that he went to put such a fine point on something that's so actionable.
And I can't imagine how helpful that would be to educators if the parents of their students were getting classes, getting tips on that. So on that note, since we're here to provide oxygen for educators, what else, if you were hosting as a mental health professional, if you were hosting a class for the parents of educators, what other tips besides tone of voice would you throw out if you had to come up with 3?
So
not to put you on the spot or anything.
I know, right? Ooh, this feels like a game show now. I'm excited. I'll buy a vowel. Okay, sorry, I'm back. So wait, let me make sure I get your question. So like 3 tips for parents that would make a difference for educators. I feel like, because I don't know if you know this, but my first job out of grad school was parent education. So I spent a good amount of time doing parent education. And I feel like the tips, I don't even know how to convey this. Like they landed less than the container, if that makes sense. So like the container of parents getting to be together, normalize the struggle, normalize the hard road, the good stuff, all of it, like to kind of feel like it's okay. Like you don't have to get it perfect, but you have to stay in relationship with your child would be the first. So like, I forget the stat exactly, but it's something like, we have to get it right, quote unquote, right, 30 to 40% of the time for children to grow up and be securely attached, and 30 to 40% of the time, not 70, not 80, not 90. Like you just have to be attuned and making the right moves with your kid 30 to 40%. Now, here's the distinction. if you get it wrong, you have to be aware enough to notice and repair. So in that, there's probably the 3 tips, like chill out so you can actually be present, because you do not have to be perfect, but be in connection and in relationship with your child enough to notice when there's a rupture and do the work of repairing that rupture. And it can be simple. It can be something as simple as, hey, I raised my voice and it actually had nothing to do with you, but you were on the other end of it, and I'm really sorry. Simple. But that repair piece is key.
Love that.
Yeah. What about you? What do you think parents might resonate with that would kind of lift some of the stress and pressure and also help educators? What has helped you?
I think thinking about when Eric talked about knowing when you need to go take a break
Tapping
and
out.
chill out and tap out. That's what he said. Tap out. When you need to do that, I think that piece and communicating to kids that you get in that place too is big. Like the pause is big.
Yes. And we forget like that actually is a service to our kids to see that that's normal. It's not something broken in them when they hit a rough spot. And also that there's something you can do. You can claim that pause. You can tap out. You can ask for what you need.
And if kids saw that modeled at home, would they show up in a different way at school too, which then helps educators do their job better?
Yeah, completely. I mean, the number one advice, and this is not out of context of the other thing I said, but I mean, it at the end of the day, if a parent has a healthy relationship with their own nervous system and they're doing their own work to stay in a good space, that extends that container to the kids so that they can have a healthy relationship with their nervous system, and that will impact how they show up at school the absolute most.
And that segues to what we're trying to do for educators, which is provide tips and oxygen to them, because we know if they show up in the best space, that's where the kids are served the best. Oh, and I loved how Eric kept taking it back to the guiding question of, is this the best thing for the kids? Which is something we're hearing consistently. But I love that. And so a question I had, and you asked him and he gave great tips, but it'd be good to talk about for our listeners, like, how do you do that? Because it's hard to do that. One tip that he gave that I loved was having the person or the people that were your people that you could talk to and go to, that peer-to-peer piece. And I wonder if everybody thinks about the importance of that. Can you speak to why that's so important?
Yeah, I mean, that goes to that community care co-regulation piece, right? Nikita Valerio said, shouting self-care at people who actually need community care is how we fail each other. So, you know, the capacity to create relationships with people who both, he said, call me out, like who both call you out if you're missing the mark, but also like create that tap out opportunity for you or give you new perspectives. Like all of that work can only be done in relationship. So, and it's a lifelong biological need, which gets missed in a lot of more Western culture mentality. We kind of think, oh, babies need it, and then they learn to self-regulate, and then it's on them. But we actually, ideally, experience mutual regulation, co-regulation when we're infants, and then we develop self-regulation, but we never, our nervous systems never, till the day we die, outgrow the need for other people to help us feel centered, grounded, connected, seen, known, heard, all the things. So that it's not fluff, it's not optional, it's a biological lifelong need.
They're doing it well at Pride Academy.
Yeah. I want to go. Don't you want to go?
I do.
Yeah, I really want to see them in action. And it was touching to me how he talked about his team, and how he, I can't even, it's like, it was like a fierce advocate and fierce protector of the work that they're doing. Like he understood that that's his role as the leader of the team. And he also just, it didn't sound like he shows up in a hierarchical way. It sounded like he really shows up shoulder to shoulder.
Hierarchical squeezy energy.
Did I say that? We've really all been there.
It was a good metaphor.
Name your top 3 bosses that gave you hierarchical squeezy energy. I bet we could all do it.
Okay, another tip that I liked, and I'm going to do this for myself, and I hope people listening will do the same thing, is developing your list of things that ground you and calm you. Because I had to pause and really go and ask myself, "Oh, what are they?" That was good. Again, was self-aware, really good to be able to answer it just like that.
Yes, he completely knew his list. I think it's critical for people to have a top 5. Like Why? 5 things, because you want to know what they are when you are in a regulated nervous system state. Because if you are dysregulated and in a survival state and you're trying to grasp for the things that are going to bring you back to kind of baseline, you're nothing. Your like prefrontal cortex is shut down. Your amygdala is in charge. You're not in problem solving mode at that point. So you got to figure out what your 5 things are and discern what kind of relationship you're in with those 5 things. Like, for example, you might have something on your list that you do every day. Okay, that's on my list. I know it serves me and I do it every day. You might have something on your list you have not done for 5 years. And then you got to audit that. You got to ask yourself, what lies am I telling myself that keep me from doing the very thing that allows me to show up as my best self, which is the number one thing you can do for the kids in your classroom, the kids in your school, is show up as your best self. So know your 5, know your relationship with those 5. And then that way, when you do get sort of pulled into a not a great state, it's automatic to grab one of those things and just do it, whether you want to or not, do it. And then eventually, you'll kind of settle back into that baseline of safe and connected nervous system.
On a personal note, I'm not going to miss my Wednesday tap dancing class anymore. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's a good
exactly.
Example. It's a perfect example. Question: would you recommend from the community care lens that your list is shared with your people?
It's always more powerful when someone else is in the loop with you, because then it's like there's an accountability piece, there's a riffing off each other, which kind of gets might help you edit your list so there's more motivation based on what someone you love is doing for themselves. Like the motivation is contagious. The motivation to prioritize our own well-being, that's contagious. And anytime we step into a more liberated mindset, heart set, like anytime we step into something that serves us without even having to speak of it, we're giving implicit permission to the people around that they can do that too. And guess what? Nothing horrible happened because you took 10 minutes to walk around the block. little things really make a difference. And for some reason, we have a pretty dominant narrative of, I don't have time for that, or that's selfish, or, there's a lot of things that keep us from caring for our own well-being. But what the neuroscience work says is that stuff is what puts you in a nervous system state where your natural brilliance just will flow through. If you are not doing the stuff that keeps you grounded, resourced, then everything is a struggle. And what you put out in the world is going to feel like it was put out in struggle instead of like it just kind of flowed through you.
Love it. You have permission to heckle me if I am not tap dancing on Wednesdays.
Yeah. What time is your class?
5:30.
In the morning?
No, at night.
Oh.
Yes. Okay. One more tip that he gave that I think would be helpful to people, and it certainly negates the purpose of doing a podcast that you hope people will listen to on their way into work. But the silent drive, I loved that, and I could tell by your face that you did too.
I did. And Katie's been trying it already. So,
okay.
And she said it has been powerful for her. So I still need to get the guts up to try it, but I liked that idea a lot. I thought that was really interesting.
Is there a scientific reason that is so helpful or powerful? I mean, is that kind of like a meditative moment, would you say?
Totally. I mean, you're essentially giving yourself the chance to actually think about your own thinking. We don't do that very often anymore. Like it's always input. We don't let it settle, let it marinate, let our own kind of inner voice or higher guidance, depending on how you think about it, surface. Like we don't create space for that. And it ripples. Like, so he does it in his drives. And in the same way, meditation practice, like then changes how you show up the whole rest of the day. It sounds like that practice he has changes how he shows up the rest of the day. He sent us a song. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, tell me. I was just going to say, I wish every person listening got to have Eric Chandler as their leader.
Yeah. I thought a lot about that too. Like, what does it look like when you are in a system where the leader thinks like Eric? And then how do you still reclaim your own sanity, your own sense of safety in a system where that isn't present? And a lot of that is linking to your people, your coworkers, like creating little baby bubbles of safety, even if your system doesn't feel safe.
And wouldn't you say that's one of the reasons we're doing what we're doing right now is to try to connect those people completely, who maybe don't have somebody in their system, but I hope to know that a leader like Eric exists is helpful to people who are listening. It helped me just thinking about the disrupting the playground to prison pipeline. I felt good knowing that work is happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so inspiring. And
okay, so tell us about the song.
Well, he talked about the being the light, that was what he wanted to etch in the 500-year-old stone. And then afterwards,
and you almost got tears, by the way.
Oh God, that's true.
I was hoping one was going to drop down.
He almost got me. Well, partly because it was so authentic to how I experienced him in that interview. So it's like, oh yeah, you're on it, you're doing it. And then he emailed Katie after, and he shared, let me see if I have it. He shared that he is inspired by Common's song, The Light. And in the chorus, it says, okay, there are times when you'll need someone. I will be by your side. There is a light that shines special for you and me. It's like, yeah, that's the space he's creating for his colleagues, for the kids, for us, for hopefully everyone that listens to the interview. He embodies that.
Gift to the world, for sure.
And I am waiting for the perfect moment where I get to say I'm at the highest level of festivity. What did he... Like, I can't wait to
I can't wait
that.
to say, and I'm going to do this to you and at the right time. Fix your face, Michelle.
Yes. Well, anyone who knows us knows that I definitely need to fix my face on a regular basis. So
well, that was a great interview. I enjoyed it. I hope everybody listening enjoyed this too.
Yeah, and it was fun to debrief with you because now I've started to like wonder how you're hearing things in the moment when I'm hearing them. And so it's fun to get to see what stood out to you and to hear your thoughts.
I'm dying to know the moment in 6th grade when he had the revelation that he wanted to be an educator. I'm dying to know that.
Right? Yeah, there's more questions. Yeah, for sure. A huge thank you to Katie Warden, our I almost said prosecutor. Our producer.
Okay, say that again. Start over.
No, we're leaving that in. And also to all of you, please subscribe, rate, review, come back, reach out to us if you have folks that you think we should be interviewing, and take care. That's it for today's episode of Oxygen for Educators. If you found value in this episode, consider sharing it with a colleague or friend. Please rate and subscribe so we can stay in conversation. And please let us hear from you if you have a suggestion for a topic or know of an educator we should interview. And thanks for all you do out there.